Have we started yet?
Sure, if you don't make me there.
Have you heard Phil introduce us?
No.
Then we haven't started.
I was just checking. I'm nodding off for a minute.
If I have to explain to you how this works after your 9th time doing this.
Right, can I start now?
Yes.
Please.
Okay.
Okay, fair enough.
Hello and welcome to the AVForums podcast for the 28th of August 2013. And joining me for this edition of the AVForums podcast is assistant editor Steve Withers.
People were still booing him when we were on stage.
Say that again?
That was delivery. That was method.
Yeah, I was acting that.
Okay. You want to do it again?
I'll do it again, one for luck.
Go on then.
People were... Hang on. Shut up, Phil. People were still booing him when we were on stage.
Movies editor Simon Crust.
I believe virtually everything I read, and I think that is what makes me more of a selective human than someone who doesn't believe anything.
He wasn't reading that. News editor Mark Hodgkinson.
We've got armadillos in our trousers. It's really quite frightening.
Games editor Mark Botwright.
You can't really dust for vomit.
And audio reviewer Ed Selley.
He died in a bizarre gardening accident.
Right, well, welcome along. Another AVForums podcast. Thank you very much for downloading and listening. And let's crack on straight away with some hardware news tonight. And let's listen for at least 5 minutes to Steve being big-headed and telling us all how he spent the last week with 55 inches of 4K TV.
Yeah, it was all right.
You've hurt his feelings.
You get
now.
used to it after a while.
He's
It's
already...
the old hat now, really. It's like the 4th one I've done, so, you know.
Oh,
okay.
well.
There we
That's
go.
old news.
Come
Bring on the OLED and the the holographic tellies and that sort of stuff now.
Yeah,
I'm sick of
poor
4K.
Mark hasn't had a 4K TV yet. You've hogged them all from him.
You would have had this one if you hadn't gone on holiday.
True. So anyway,
Right, yes.
in all
yeah,
seriousness, is it better than the Sony? That's what I want to know.
I'd have to say it's close, but I probably would give it to the Sony just slightly. I think you had I know it's difficult to explain. Just found the image on the Sony just that little bit better, a little bit more plasma-like in a way, bizarrely. In terms of the actual specs, I mean, they're almost identical. Obviously, the major difference is that the Sony used passive 3D and this uses active 3D. The other big difference, and this is something that I can't believe nobody else seems to have thought of, and it's a really simple but brilliant idea on the part of Samsung, is that it comes with what they call the One Connect box. So there's no connections on the actual panel itself apart from a single connector for this box. So a proprietary cable, and all the connections go into the box, which is brilliant because it means that when they do finally agree the 4K standards and HDMI 2.0 gets released, all Samsung have to do is send out a new one of these boxes to their customers, and Bob's your uncle, you've got an upgraded future-proof telly. It's absolutely brilliant. Not only that, but also it means that you can, if you're wall mounting, for example, you've got the box somewhere else and just that one cable along with the power cable going to the TV itself. It's nice, tidy cable management. So in that sense, brilliant. I mean, that gives it, in that sense, it gives it the edge over the Sony because I actually can see how this can be future-proofed. I'm dubious about how LG and Sony are going to do theirs.
Unless something very, very similar.
Unless LG have copied Samsung, would surprise me. So the box thing, great idea. The look of it's very, what I describe as quite un-Samsung-like. It's it's kind of a classic TV design with
it looks
brushed
really,
black.
really good, I thought.
It's attractive, yeah. It's got very, but it's very sort of classic and simple, really. It's just got a black brushed metal bezel, standard rectangular stand, sort of silver trim on the outside of the display. Maybe it's quite an attractive TV. Sound is they've been working. Obviously, I think every manufacturer's been working on the sound quality in the last year or so because everyone knows they've been pretty poor. And again, it sounded a lot better than previous Samsung TVs I've heard. But the chassis is a bit deeper, which might have helped a bit. In terms of 4K, well, again, there's no content, so I had some test stuff I could watch on it. But most of the stuff I was watching was upscaled to 1080p, which looked very good. Yeah, I mean, it's a solid TV. It's a big thing, of course.
How much is it,
price.
Steve, this one?
Yeah, I was going to say, big thing is price. And you can currently get it for £3,300, which is about £800, if that, more than the flagship 1080p Samsung, which is the F8000. So this is the F9000 we're reviewing at the moment. I mean, that's not a massive premium for what is brand new tech. So
Yeah, when you're in that ballpark anyway, it's not that much to think of.
There may be more price cuts coming as well. So, I think it's going to be hitting a sort of a mass market price tipping point pretty quickly.
Interesting, you mentioned the sound. Obviously, the Sony had the speakers built into the chassis. This doesn't.
No, they're sort of in the bass downward firing, more sort of traditional implementation of speakers these days. It's not ideal, but it didn't sound bad at all. I'm not saying. Anyone who buys one of these TVs, anyone who's spending £4,000 on a telly is almost certainly going to be using it with some kind of outboard amplification. And I did make this point to Samsung. I said, why don't you just build a TV with no speakers? Just deliver as a monitor, the way that Pioneer did do. In fact, funnily enough, Pioneer used to do. You could add speakers and it had the separate box. And they said that the problem is that the head of Samsung has got this thing about wanting everything to be all in one solution in one TV, and therefore sort of demand that they put speakers in, even though they all agree that actually it would make more sense not to bother. It would mean they could concentrate just on the picture. They could keep the price down a little bit more. You're spending money on things people aren't necessarily going to use, which is particularly the case with the Sony, where you have those really big speakers on the sides, which might not get used at all by anyone who buys a 65-inch, £6,000 4K TV. So it's the sound was quite passable, but clearly if you want a really good sound, you're going to go to some sort of outboard solution.
I thought it was interesting about the price. I was walking around my local store today, in fact. What was that LG, the 84-inch LG 4K TV?
24,000. Yeah,
24,000.
Yeah.
12,500 now. In what's that? 8 months?
That's a significant price drop because you have no idea how many of those they sold.
Is it not? Yeah. Although, and then next door to it, they had the 85-inch Samsung, which was the price of a small car.
Yeah, that's
£35,000.
Yeah, it's interesting. The 85-inch Samsung is A, unbunbelievably expensive. B, has that hideous easel.
That horrible stand.
Yeah,
horrible stand.
The good thing about it is it does have full array backlighting rather than edge lighting, which on a screen of that size you have to do.
Yeah, it did look quite
You
incredible.
really can't edge light on an 84-inch screen. It's going to just look awful.
Oh, well worth the 35 grand then if it does that.
Oh, yeah, no, that's a snip, I think, at £5,000 for something you're not going to be able to watch anything on.
I think we really upset Samsung at CES. The UK rep was there, and we didn't have very kind words for that design, did we? So it looked
the
far
funny thing
better.
is, we pointed out, didn't we, that at an angle, the stand itself gets in the way of the picture.
Yeah,
and even though we could show him that from where we were standing, he seemed oblivious to that particular point.
Yeah, a bit like curved TVs, which brilliant segue brings us into the next subject, which is OLED, which it says in my notes it's finally arrived. I'll believe that when I see it. But Samsung have launched their models. No price yet, but I think we're guessing somewhere between 6 and 9 grand, round about that sort of price level for this, and it's curved. You all know my thoughts on curved TVs. I don't need to say it again.
It's a bit bent.
I think they'll look nice, won't they? They'll look nice in the likes of Harrods and John Lewis, and they might sell on that aesthetic. But yeah, who really wants that? So it's the 55-inch S9C arriving next Wednesday. So prepare yourselves for a price announcement at IFA. We think. Yeah.
I mean, are they not releasing a flat one, just a curved one?
Well, I don't know. Well, they're going to at some point, aren't they? But maybe they want to shift a few 4K TVs.
We do want a flat OLED screen. That would be great.
Of course, yeah.
We just don't want a curved one because
I can't imagine manufacturing a curved one is any easier than I can't imagine the yields are any better with the curved ones than the flat ones. But yeah, it seems strange that they're coming in with the curved ones. Just going to confuse people, I would have thought. But there was rumours, I think, back in June that there was Samsung were going to release a 75-inch at IFA and a 77-inch from LG probably an hour later, so they can have the world's largest OLED. So maybe they'll be flat with any luck. But yeah, that's
when it's curved, you're so annoyed at what you're looking at, you don't notice any of the production problems that mean they'd have to junk a flat screen. Just maybe that's how it works.
Are you suggesting they've got issues with making them?
I think my favourite line from the press release was that this is like an IMAX screen at home.
No, it's not, though, is it?
No, it's not. It's only 55 inches for a start. This whole cinematic thing, because it's covered and all the rest of it, it's absolute bollocks.
So why do you think you're introducing the first gen of OLED in this way to the public?
Just so that it's different from normal TVs.
Just because they can. I mean, it's one of the things with OLED. OLED is flexible, and you're going to see it in mobile phones, and you're going to see it in other gadgets where the screen's flexible, or you can fold it up and that kind of thing, because the technology works that way. It's one of the benefits. But when it comes to TVs, what is the point of a curved screen? I can understand it on a 80-foot cinema screen when you're using anamorphic lenses and you get pin cushion and stuff, because that's what it's designed to do. It makes sure that the light is the same brightness all the way across the screen, because it's such a large screen. They have to taper it in so the light hits it at the same time as the centre. That's the point of a curved screen. It's not cinematic, and it doesn't belong on a TV.
You could make a great goldfish bowl screensaver, though.
It's true.
There was a bloke in The Economist this week who was quite excited about it as a concept for more realistic actual professional training flight simulators. But again, domestically, it's not curved.
It's not curved to that extent, though. It's only just a gentle curve. It's just.
Oh no! He was saying there is
down the line
going forward where you can actually do for combat jets. You can actually do like the entire canopy.
Yeah, I mean, it could be incredible for really incredible for gaming. I would have thought it could be.
Well, you've got the Oculus Rift for that, haven't you, Mark? If you want the true experience of actually being there.
Well, you've got that kind of thing. You've got multiple monitor setups and the like. It's something that's never really kind of caught on because, I mean, you need a great setup for it, and usually the size of the PC you need to kind of drive anything that you could be processing three different screens at once.
That's why it's so good, because you won't need all that extra processing, will you? You're only driving one screen.
And the
presumably have quite a low input lag too, given the response times on them.
Yeah, that's an unknown quantity, but they're promising it, aren't they? We will see. With all that processing, I'm dubious.
I don't know, all this effort. The most atmospheric games I remember playing, were laughably crude by modern standards, but it was just all about the suspension of disbelief. Space Hulk on the Amiga, really
Defender.
Quite something, but let's face it, it was done on a shonky 13-inch CRT in my case. So.
Yeah, the world has moved on from there, Ed.
Speak for yourself.
Even I know that. And I'm not a gamer, but even I know that's moved on. I suppose gaming-wise, there are uses for curving the screens. Advertising, definitely. You could put curved screens on the sides of buildings and that kind of thing. I can see where the technology would work, but for in the home, it's absolute bollocks. And it's advertising, it's marketing, and I feel sorry for people who will pay that type of money for a screen which is flawed, basically. And it's a new technology. Do you really want to take the risk on Generation 1?
Oh, no.
No, this is just Generation 3, isn't it, according to LG?
Yes, but none of these generations have thus far experienced contact with the customer. Ergo, they are very much Generation 1.
Yeah. But how are they even actually marketing this? What's the kind of driving force behind it?
They're marketing it as IMAX at home. That is the line from the press release. IMAX at home, cinematic experience.
Yeah, but what's that going to do to the Great British Bake Off? I mean,
those cakes are look really good.
Except they're not. It's not. There's certain things where it's a trade-off to just how much cinematic experience you want versus just what on earth it's going to do to normal television.
Having Jeremy Kyle in your home. I'm
Curvy
sorry.
buns.
Literally.
Well, nothing can save that, can it? Yeah. Whatever you watch it on.
I mean, they've got a problem. You're absolutely right, Mark B. That one of the things they've got a problem with is they've been spending the last 5 years telling everyone that they're buying an LED TV. And they haven't been. They've been buying an LCD TV with an LED backlight. Now they've got OLED. People are going to say, well, hang on, what's the difference between that and the TV that I've already got? So,
they're going to have the triple whammy, aren't they? The triple whammy in the shop floor. They're going to have 4K OLED and LEDs.
They've also got OLED. Which
explain that one, Mr. Salesman.
And so making it curved at least means it stands out from the rest of the crowd, which I suspect is the reason why they've done it.
But what does it do to things like viewing angles?
Yeah, well, it buggers it up. Basically, it's one sweet spot, and that's it.
That's the really weird thing to me is this idea that in fact we went from like the big selling point for flat screens was you could actually put one in the living room and you wouldn't have to move it. You wouldn't have to say, right, who gets the good chair with a good viewing angle and who's sat off to the side on the crappy sofa. And then all of
Well,
a sudden,
that depends entirely upon what kind of
That's
TV
the
you're looking
technology,
at.
that's
I
the
mean,
technology.
the one I was talking about a few minutes ago, the UE55 F9000, Samsung has a very narrow field of view to get the best blacks. You had to basically be sat right in front of it.
see, it seems like the kind of thing where they can only really sell it to someone who's saying, I have one chair, I'm the only person who will watch this, and that's it. Whereas the vast majority of people
who
who
play
have other
games, mainly.
compromises.
I was just going to say target audience right here.
Oh, do we want to? Yeah.
No, I'm serious. I mean, Steve lives on his own. He can sit right in front of it. Target audience. There you go. It just doesn't have the disposable income, that's all.
No, but he wouldn't
He'll get
spend
one
his
for a
time
week or two.
watching quality films like Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, so he'd know the quotes.
We
He isn't going to let
still
this one
seething
go
after that.
quietly.
Sit there rewatching Jaws for the 1,000th.
I think he's just snipped Mark's mic cable there.
No, I muted it.
All right, okay. Saves me with the beep,
Still
does
talking.
Yep.
Right, so obviously they've made this announcement. It is IFA next week. It's the largest European show. They keep saying it's bigger than CES, but that's not the case. In terms of square footage, I think it's the same.
Yeah,
but
I think that's what they mean, isn't it? It's just
but what they
footage.
tend to do is you'll have Sony will have one giant hall, and Panasonic will have one giant hall, and LG will have a giant hall, and that's it. It's not like loads and loads of stand space. It's like huge halls, all laid out with the latest products and so on. And I've just been looking at an email from Panasonic press office telling us about what we can expect on their stand, and I looked through it, and it looks like it's the same stand that was at CES at the beginning of the
It's the
year.
same press release, just with a few details changed.
I don't even think that, Mark. It was like exactly the same layout, and this is the problem with IFA because of the time of year. I don't know what it's like for Hi-Fi, Ed, but certainly the time of year. It's September. You're getting towards the end of the year, Q4. You would think the only real benefits there are a push product for Q4 for Christmas sales. Everything else happens in January, which is it's only 4 months away.
Yeah, hi-fi manufacturers don't really know what to do with IFA. If you are a genuine audio manufacturer, you're just going to get lost amongst the enormous screens and the white goods. So some of the bigger companies sort of come along as they sort of feel obligated to do. It's a big German show. It has a large audience, but in terms of releases, you'll be looking at a comparatively small number of bits and bobs. Although, in a complete 180-degree turn from last week, I am actually going now. I'll
see you there then, Ed.
Yeah, if there is anything new, I will do my best to take a picture of it.
Mine's a pint, please, Ed.
Oh, well, I'm out on the Sunday and the Monday, so before you get excited, I don't know if that's the same, or are you just there for the whole thing?
I'll be gone by then.
No, there you go. You see, so it'll unless I'm going to email my order into one of the beer tents, you ain't getting a beer off me.
I wouldn't buy him a beer either.
Just buy him a nice sausage. It must be said that IFA
No, thank you, Ed. I do not want any sausage.
Would you use the man on this date?
I've got to say, Ed's comments on last week's podcast about big burly German men and sausages. I'm starting to worry about this now. I really am.
I spent most of my childhood growing up in Germany. It still evokes a fairly strong feeling of familiarity. Just pork products, ludicrous facial hair, leather
Jellied
waistcoats.
pig's head. You had jellied pig's head.
Not recently, no.
Yeah. Currywurst.
Surprisingly
Currywurst is the meal, definitely.
They're just good at sausages, full stop. And I mean that in a pork product way and not a horrifying reference to
Even if they turned them into Zeppelins and bombed us with them later.
How do you get...
Have you been at the diesel again?
No, I was watching Attack of Zeppelins on TV, and they used the stomach lining stomach lining of cows, which is what they were making sausages out of, is what they made the bags of hydrogen that were inside the Zeppelins from, because they weren't porous and they could seal them together and make them airtight, or hydrogen tight. So for about 2 years in Germany during World War I, there were no sausages because they were using all the skins to make Zeppelins.
So if it would have gone up
250,000 cows were required.
If it
for
would have
one
gone up
Zeppelin.
like the Hindenburg, it would have come down like crackling then.
No, they changed it by then. But
That would have been worth it.
does ask, when they caught fire, whether there was a sort of delicious beefy smell.
Well, apparently they were incredibly difficult, regardless of you might think from watching the Hindenburg blow up. Actually, really difficult to set fire to.
No. The Germans did know a lot about putting several million cubic feet of hydrogen in one place. That's why, actually, comparatively, they had less horrifying incidences than people that built a lot less airships than they did.
They also tend to be quite good at dropping sentry devices on us, which was another interesting thing.
Oh, yes.
Let it go, Steve.
It's been 100 years.
Yeah.
Let it go.
I'd let it go before next week, otherwise. But I don't want an international AV
Don't
Forums
mention
incident.
the war.
What was it you said at the beginning of this podcast? I want no deviations. EFA to Zeppelin bombing effortlessly and in less than 90 seconds.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Although it was an interesting thing that you brought up there, Ed, about the white goods, and this is something I think that people forget. They think IFA's a huge show, but actually about half the show is white goods. Everything from washing machines, irons, and fridge freezers, and so on. It's one of these things when you go on one of the stand tours, it bores the absolute pants off of me.
Well, speak for yourself. I appreciate a good kitchen as much as the next metrosexual does. So some of the stuff there was great, and it must be said, I'm going to stick my neck out here. They're a better quality of promo girl pushing some of the kitchen stuff than we get on the consumer electronics side.
The one thing I saw last year, which I thought was really, really cool, was the hobs.
It's the induction-based
system where you put the pan down, and all it does is it heats the area under the pan. It doesn't heat anywhere else. So you can't burn yourself, but you can also power your kettle and other goods by just putting it on top of the hub. I thought that was really, really interesting. That was, for me, being a single bloke who eats from a takeaway and doesn't really cook, that was interesting. That might get me in the kitchen.
Would it make you cook, or you just warm your takeaway on it?
Probably just warm the takeaway on it.
As I say, the Philips ironing competition last time.
Let's not go there.
Running something like that again.
between the white goods, the prams, and the sausages, I'm beginning to wonder about you, Ed.
Well, you can make whatever judgments you like.
There's a pram involved, Steve.
Perfectly happy where
There's
I
no kids
am.
in your life, we noticed.
Sorry.
There's a pram at least there's a pram in Ed's life. There's no sign of a pram in yours.
Anyway, let's not go there.
Yeah, hands up who's editing the podcast after this.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned the pram, because I'm just opening my browser, because we did get asked a question actually on the podcast thread. Actually, we were told off because we didn't do an up to the date on time update for the Pram news. I'm just trying to think who it was. Give me a second. It was
Taxi Man, was it not?
It was Licensed Taxi Man. He was disappointed there wasn't any beeps. Well, we can help there. And he said there was nothing about the Pram. So, what is the latest news on the Pram?
Well, I've been practicing with it. I'm getting well good at folding it up with one hand, and we've actually moved on from that. It's all sewed away. Mainly been correcting the idiocy of the Ford Motor Company, who build what they purport to be a family car, which doesn't have any ISOFIX mounts in it. So I had to have that all.
Any what? Sorry.
ISOFIX. It's a mount. It's a universal fixing for child seats, and it goes in on a sled. So instead of spending a lot of time,
don't you just use a seatbelt for that?
Well, no. Instead of standing there in the rain trying to put Junior in using the seatbelts, it just clamps on. So it's convenient and it's safer because the seat itself moves entirely on the same axis as the vehicle does, and you're essentially anchored all the way down to the subframe. So it's win-win. And now, thanks to me correcting Ford's screw-up, I can do that.
What use is that in a two-seater sports car?
Do you know what? This is the thing. You're being. I know. Obviously, I can tell you're being facetious, and I'll forgive you for that. But it's the ridiculous position where if you buy a brand new 2013 Porsche 911, it's got ISOFIX mounts on those little back seats. It has, and this bloody C-Max I bought, which is just a van with windows,
sensible as it gets, isn't it?
Didn't have them as standard. Which
that's Ed, because the only thing you can fit on the back seats of a Porsche is a tiny little kid's seat.
Actually, do you know what? I had to fold myself into the back seats of a 911 on Thursday night, and I actually needed help to get out the other end. I mean, obviously, those people have seen me. I'm not the smallest or thinnest bloke going, so it's partly self-inflicted. But I once I got in there's that nagging feeling I'm not coming out again without help.
Or worse than that, if this car crashes, I'm finished.
Well, I can imagine.
I was so wedged in place. I'd have been.
I can imagine, Ed, having you in there would change the complete dynamics of the car. The weight distribution and so on. Must have
Joking aside, I don't know if you've ever been on any of those like internal flights where I used to do a lot of work with one guy who was at least the same size as me, and they used to take one look at us getting on these tiny planes and go, "Actually, sir, would you mind going on that side if you on the other?" And it's like, "Oh yeah, thank you very much."
Everyone win.
Say it like you mean it.
Yeah, I have been on those planes as well. Yeah, unfortunately. Anyway, let's move on. That's hardware. Come back in a second with movie news. And we're back.
Almost there.
One of these days we're going to race through this podcast and get it done in the hour that it's supposed to get done.
Well, that's what happened last week, wasn't it? You made us do some more shit because we
you
finished
all
early.
raced through it. Then you said, "Actually, we don't have anything like enough because most of it's
Yeah, but it did turn into.
Let's talk about Theodore Rex. Woo!
Yeah, well, it turned into comedy gold. So if I hadn't pushed us, we wouldn't have had that comedy gold. What's at the cinema, Steve?
Right, well, this week we have Elysium, which is the new film from Neil Blomkamp, who directed District 9. It stars Matt Damon, who basically plays... it's set in the future, about 150 years in the future, and basically Earth is a complete dump. Total shithole, and everyone rich has moved off to Elysium, which is a massive orbiting space station. Now, the first thing I thought was, hang on a minute, there's an awful lot of Halo in this film, because I don't know if anyone's played Halo, but they have those giant orbitals with the... sort of green grass, everything on the inside of the orbital. Well, that's basically what Elysium looks like. And Neil Blomkamp was going to direct at one point a film version of Halo. And I get the sneaking feeling he's been reusing ideas from that film on the last two films he's made. Because some of the guns and the alien stuff in District 9 was very kind of Halo-y. There's also quite a bit of Halo-y kind of guns in this one too. Not to mention various aircraft and other vehicles, plus Elysium itself. So, yeah, I think he has been reusing some of this old stuff from Halo on this stuff. Anyway, set in the near future. Everyone rich is living in Elysium, and it's clearly an allegory for the modern world now. And basically, we live in Elysium, and if you live in a third world, you're in a dump, and your life's rubbish. And that's basically the sense. So it's a bit heavy-handed in that sense. But then again, so is District 9 with racism, basically. But District 9 was just a lot funnier and a lot more fun. This film, it looked spectacular. There's one thing he's really good at. It's making effects look realistic. Excuse me a second. There's a Hercules going over.
It's a Zeppelin.
Was that
Watch out for the sausage.
They've come for you.
Best fart I ever heard.
Yeah, he's really good at making effects look realistic. There's a kind of sense of almost documentary style to the whole thing. It's very handheld, a little bit too handheld in the fight scenes, which get very shaky cam. But the effects, it looks spectacular. Elysium itself looks amazing. I just kind of felt like, unlike District 9, which was kind of fun and funny and just this just felt a bit too heavy-handed. I didn't really relate to Matt Damon's character, and as the hero, it makes it difficult. Jodie Foster's in it, and she plays like the villain effectively, but her performance is awful. I mean, she's a great actress, don't get me wrong, but she's dreadful in this, really wouldn't. And I'm not quite sure if it was deliberate or whether she's having an off day or off 3 weeks, however long she was on set for. But it was she was putting on this really fake, slightly weird English accent for one reason, for no obvious reason. And yeah, unfortunately, she was a bit. Whereas Sharpo Sheppy, Shalto, hang on a minute.
Whilst you search for that, I have to. I mean, quite unexpectedly, I went to see this as well. I'd love to say I disagree violently, but I don't. I thought it was needlessly preachy. I honestly didn't really give a toss what happened to any of them. And yeah, it's just weirdly unfulfilling.
Yeah, it was. I was quite looking forward to this.
The best two-word review I could give of that film. Weirdly,
no, you're right.
Unfulfilling.
It was very. I mean, at the end, I can only assume the ending was meant to be a commentary on universal healthcare. That's how it read to me. But yes. Yeah, it was preachy. It wasn't. Yeah, I just felt disappointed in a way. I mean, it looked fantastic, but I just didn't really engage with the characters or really care about the plot. And that kind of is the important part. So, and it wasn't particularly much fun. It was kind of very po-faced. And the only time it was funny was when Sharlto Copley was on stage. Hang on, let me do that again. When Sharlto Copley was on screen. He plays kind of like an enforcer stroke hitman stroke lunatic. And he is South African in real life, and he uses his really strong South African accent, which is kind of inherently funny. So he was humorous in it, but otherwise the film just felt like it was trying too hard at times, and it could have been more fun. So that's Elysium. The other film I saw, which actually doesn't come out until the end of this week, is Pain and Gain, which is the new film from I've totally forgotten his name.
Bay.
Yes, thank you.
Michael Bay.
Yes.
From that, you can describe it straight away. It is.
It's the new film from Michael Bay. So it's the first film that hasn't involved giant robots since The Island, which was about 10 years ago, I think. And it's Michael Bay off, sort of off the hook, R-rated, strong language, loads of violence, and actually, I really enjoyed it.
No.
Yeah, I did. I really enjoyed it.
No, Stephen. Oh no.
I like Michael Bay when he's doing that. Bad Boys 2, great film.
No.
I really, really enjoyed it. I mean, I'm not a big Mark Wahlberg fan, but he was quite funny in it. It is actually based on a true story. It's about a bunch of bodybuilders who basically kidnap this guy and force him to sign over all of his money and assets to them. And then they basically nick all of his stuff. And it is based on a true story. And a lot of the events in it are quite genuine. Some of them are ridiculous. And you think, well, there's no way that could happen. At one point, something ridiculous is happening. And it actually says on the screen, this is still a true story. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's in it. And he's absolutely... I've always liked him. I thought he was really charming. And I thought he was really funny in it. Yeah, it's kind of classic Michael Bay. It is hugely over the top, just ridiculous at times. But then it's telling such a ridiculous story that it kind of suits the material. It's got violence, swearing, sex. It's just got drug taking, the lot in it, basically. But it is nice to see Michael Bay doing something that isn't aimed at 10-year-olds and designed to sell toys. Unfortunately, his next film is Transformers 4, so we're back to...
There's a fourth one.
Oh yes, Transformers 4 with Mark Wahlberg, actually, funny enough, in the lead. Completely new cast. Apparently they're kind of semi-rebooting it now.
Yeah, it's a reboot, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, so they can obviously redesign all the toys and sell more of them to kids. So yeah, Pain and Gain. At least I enjoyed Pain and Gain considerably more than I enjoyed Elysium. Pain and Gain was just quite funny in places. Nice action scenes. It was just it just felt like he was letting his hair down. Lower budget, 30 million, something like that. So for him at least, tiny budget. Just letting his hair down and having a bit of a laugh, and playing around. And in that sense, I was happy to go along for the ride.
This is going to do nothing for your continued accusations that I swing both ways. But isn't The Rock like terrifyingly ripped in it? Isn't he like literally?
Oh yeah, well they're playing bodybuilders, so they're
yes, I know that, but even by his standards, it's just like, oh my god,
he's absolutely gigantic in it. And Mark Wahlberg's really, he's usually pretty buff, but he's actually huge as well because he really built up for this.
What the hell? I'm struggling with this conversation.
What the hell?
So he's by The Rock.
Do you want a private room, you two? Or?
Well, I've got to say, it's the first time I've heard The Rock described as charming.
It's really charismatic, actually. I genuinely like The Rock.
Yeah, Steve's got a man crush.
Well, you could get crushed by it.
Definitely crush us. Yeah. No question about that. It's got Ed Harris in it playing a private detective, and Ed Harris is always good value. And it's also got Tony Shalhoub, who's very funny, is the guy that they basically steal from. To be fair, there are accusations against the film, which is because it is based on a true story. There is a set part where two people are murdered, and people have accused it of saying, because you sympathise with the villains, basically, is kind of the point. And in doing so, you're thinking, well, I'm sympathising with somebody who has, he's killed people, and then maybe you shouldn't. These are real people. It's not like it's a fiction. These people did actually die in real life. So maybe you shouldn't be sympathising with people like that. But, sorry, it's funny.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Steve, because I was going to mention that. Tonally, it's wrong. It's just wrong. It's played as a comedy, and it's wrong. But anyway, Michael Bay, what a pile of crap. Anyway,
silence.
Moving swiftly on.
So-
Anyway, moving on from ripped men and that kind of discussion, Ben Affleck as Batman.
Oh my God.
Didn't he play Daredevil?
He played Daredevil. I actually quite like that film.
Yeah, but he
And
didn't
the
swear
Vulture.
afterwards he'd never get into another pair of tights again.
Well, they're not technically tights on Batman.
Well,
so-
I know they're not technically tights, but
It depends. If he reboots it as the Adam West version, he will be.
see, that I'd
good
go and
point.
see.
Yes.
Especially if it was The Rock in a pair of tights.
There's a self-satisfied little sigh there. I don't know. I've got to say that I was convinced that this film was going to be terrible anyway, so it doesn't really matter. I mean, they could have cast. Well, they could have
Adam West.
Theodore
Yes.
Rex.
Anyone.
Anyone. Yeah, I just don't think that the premise. I think it's just going to be another. It's going to take itself monstrously seriously, and it's going to be absolutely joyless.
Well, you see,
In
the
every way
interesting
possible.
thing for me is the whole internet thing. You know, Twitter went crazy, Facebook's gone crazy, forums have gone crazy with people saying, giving their opinions on this. There's even a petition in the studio saying Ben Affleck should not play Batman. That's just silly, isn't it?
I saw something on the internet where he said Ben Affleck went home, polished his Oscars, shagged Jennifer Garner, and then laughed at the internet. I'm Batman. That sums it up, really. It does seem ridiculous. I mean, wasn't there a massive uproar when they cast Michael Keaton as Batman?
I was going to say Michael Keaton was a more unusual choice
Yeah,
for
that
Batman.
was definitively
Because-
left field.
Because Ben's got a good chin. That's the only bit of Batman you ever see, isn't it? You want a good manly chin.
God,
Your
stop it.
square-jawed chin.
Stop
But
it.
he's always
not hard enough, is it?
smirking. I don't think Batman should smirk too much.
I think people think that Ben Affleck's too smug.
Well,
Well,
actually,
he's smug, isn't he? I'd be smug if I was him.
the last internet uproar over a Batman character was for the Joker and
Yeah,
who was
look
going
at that, yeah.
to play the Joker. Do you remember
Absolutely
the uproar at the time? And there was talks of petitions and all the rest of it. One of the best screen performances in the last 20 years.
Absolutely right, Phil.
Yeah.
Yeah. Heath Ledger. Yeah.
I reckon that Affleck should subvert expectations, though, and do the entire thing with his Argo beard.
Yeah.
that could just really screw.
Oh, no, better still. No, a giant, Dirty Sanchez moustache. Brilliant, Batman. Then he look like Big Daddy out of Kiss Ass.
Steve, not kiss
Kick
ass.
it. Well, that's the version Steve sings.
yeah, some gay porn.
Well, I mean, it's, you know, this could go either way, but I said this 3 podcasts ago, that this is likely to be the film that's going to bust the bubble, and
The problem is that I half want to
nothing at the minute.
Go pay to see if it is a train wreck, and in doing that, I would be avoiding the self-fulfilling prophecy that it will be terrible.
Yeah, I'm thinking the same thing. I think I'm going to go and see it just to see how bad it is.
What
So-
I might pay to see a different film and then sneak in, just so I don't. I
You haven't
refuse to
paid.
give any money to the to Mel Gibson for The Passion of the Christ. So I paid. I can't remember what I got paid to go and see instead. They started 5 minutes apart. Paid to go see one thing, went to see the other. You know, and the last time I checked, Mel Gibson and his mental church weren't in any danger of running out of money. So, you know, everyone's a winner.
Superman and Batman. It could work, though. I mean, there are plenty of good Superman and Batman crossovers.
I mean, the comics.
Yeah.
See, the closer it gets, the sad fact is that I was ready to say that it'll probably be terrible, but the closer it gets, and as soon as I start seeing some shots from it, I will kind of get drawn into that hype train. It will be the kind of thing that you will have to see, because whether it's deemed good or terrible, people will want to have an opinion on it. And so that almost guarantees you a certain amount anyway.
Yeah, but Mark, have you not in the past admitted that you are easily susceptible to any type of hype?
Yeah, yes, there is that, I will admit. But you know what?
hot noodle.
I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that as much as I dislike Ben Affleck's face, I think he might make a good Batman. I think, I mean, if you saw him in Hollywoodland, he had the same kind of, you know, screen idol looks of a
That's right,
typical
yeah, he did,
comic book hero with the square jaw and everything, but he had a certain amount of gravitas, the kind of vulnerability of Bruce
He was
Wayne
really
you'd
good
associate.
in Hollywoodland, actually.
He was fantastic in that.
Yeah, that's
So
a good point. I forgot about Hollywoodland.
It's the one film you forget about because he was good in it.
Oh yeah.
No, to
Oh,
quote
yeah, it's gonna be
Jane,
brilliant. It's
to
gonna be
quote
superb.
Jane Silent Bob, Affleck was the bomb in Phantom, yo.
And I still say that was his greatest screen performance.
What, Phantoms?
No. Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back.
I haven't been
No,
with
it's
them
got to be reindeer games, surely.
No, because there was that conversation in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back between him and Matt Damon about the films they make, and there was a little hint of truth in it. You know, the digs at forces of nature and things like that, where he had to kind of slightly, accept that he had made some real turds.
Oh yeah. He knows he did it for them. Didn't Kevin Smith once say that when he made the film Paycheck, never has a film had a more appropriate title?
Yeah.
Obviously, just when they get pass over that film promo board, only Ben Affleck can stop the moon raper.
Yeah.
He's able to laugh at himself.
Yeah,
and
I
that
was
is
just
a
going
rare
to say,
and
what was
wonderful
the thing he did with Sarah Silverman and was it Jimmy Fallon? And Sarah Silverman went on the show and said, "I'm Matt Damon," and then the next week, Jimmy is it Jimmy Fallon?
It was Jimmy Kimmel.
Jimmy Kimmel.
Yeah, Ben Affleck.
And they were both in it. Brad Pitt was in it. Who else was in it? There was loads of Hollywood people in it.
And half of Hollywood was in that.
Yeah, but they got a good sense of humour. I've got to say that about Affleck. He has got a good sense of humour. And what a shame at the Oscars.
Yes.
Yeah, he's also a very talented director, I have to say. Certainly more talented than Zack Snyder.
Well, it could go either way, so we'll see how we go.
Could go either way, yeah, a bit like you, Ed.
There's no good about it.
All right, let's quickly wrap up on the movies and TV side of things. Kevin Spacey gave a business speech last week to TV executives, TV studios, and so on. And I have to say, what he raised was really quite interesting, Mark.
Yeah. Kevin was saying that to speaking to a lot of broadcasters that they've really got to seize this time and give the public what they want and how they want it. So specifically citing his example of the excellent House of Cards, which was a Netflix exclusive, and he was saying that people really want to be able to access all the episodes at once, or just in a binge kind of viewing method, and I'm totally with that. Breaking Bad's just reappeared on Netflix, but unfortunately that is on a drip feed as it happens because of the way it's the licensing agreements with the US.
Yeah, it's the day after the US.
It's the day after, yeah. I refused to watch it until there was at least 4 in
You
the
are
can.
a binger, aren't you, Mark?
I am a bit. I have to do it in binge fashion. So I've actually gone back and started watching it from somewhere in series 4, I think around about episode 10, just so I'm doing. I want to do it in blocks of 3 or 4 at a time. So yeah, and I'm totally with that. And he was saying they've got to look at the way they distribute and the way they allow people to access the content. And yeah, it was just very forward-thinking stuff from Kevin Spacey.
It's one of my pet hates about Netflix is the fact that you get the full seasons of quite a few TV programs that I want to see, and I know that if I start on one season, that's going to be me right the way through till I finish the season, or at least
pick shows that have been cancelled.
Yeah, that is that.
Episodes.
You see,
pick the crap.
I don't.
It kind of defeats the object. No, I really like it. I really like digesting TV in that way. I don't get a great deal of time to watch for pleasure, so an hour and a half, maybe late at night. And if I can watch a couple of shows in that time, then I'm up for the next night. And I just find the immersion factor just goes up when you just that much more in there if you're watching it in big blocks.
I really enjoyed House of Cards doing it that way. The whole 13 of them.
Yeah.
I think I got to 10 in one sitting, 9 or 10 in one sitting.
I can't do that.
But you see, that's I know what I'm like. That's why I'm trying to avoid sitting down and starting seasons, because I'm like that. It's
addict.
Well, you can talk, Steve. Go on. Tell us your habits.
No, let's
Hang on,
not
we're
go
still
there.
talking about TV.
Well, whatever.
What about you, Mark? B, how do you watch your TV, and what do you think about what Mr. Spacey's suggesting?
I tend to watch if I can. If there's something that I'm interested in, I'll try and tape a few off TV and then watch them in a few blocks, maybe a couple of episodes at a time. But I can't watch any more than that, not in one go.
I'd say a couple in a night, but over sort of 3 or 4 nights in the week. That's the way I really like to do it. I want more than suggesting sitting there watching one after the other.
I think one of the best experience I've had with the TV series in recent times was when they started showing The Wire in the UK, and they were doing it on double bills per night, and then they were doing it through the week like that. And so you could get, like a double bill pretty much, every night, and you were guaranteed to get your fix that way. I think it's great to kind of get through a series so that you can kind of watch the progression of it, but without letting it slide for a week, because just kind of an hour a week with the average kind of US show, it's about 44 minutes in general, and then you've got the kind of adverts and that kind of thing, and it just seems such an antiquated way to watch TV now.
So give people, that's what it's 44 minutes or 46 minutes for Breaking Bad. No ads, don't have to sit there waiting for anything. It's just the perfect way of watching TV as far as I'm concerned.
I know, Simon, you're not really into this streaming thing. What's your views?
I do the same, but with the physical media, the disc. So I'm watching. I've just finished Breaking Bad season 4. I haven't started season 5 because I've only got the first half. But I watched all of that in about a week, maybe 8 days, 2 or 3 a night.
So it's the same way of consuming.
It's the same way of consuming it. It's just that I don't use it through the
media.
Yeah, just a different way of doing it. But I mean, it is the way to view TV programs. Is either streaming it
Netflix
or
is £6 a month, and what's it cost you for the disc?
The masters. Netflix is such good value. I mean, I watched 4 seasons of Fringe that I was thinking of buying on Blu-ray, which would have been £100.
Yeah,
and I watched it for basically nothing.
And that's it for TV series. I'm not so bothered about it being on Blu-ray. The quality's fine if your connection's good for TV series.
Netflix US Ed, BMX Bandits.
Is it on there?
It's on there.
Is it on there?
After our last podcast, I thought, I wonder if it's on Netflix. And it's there, and it's bloody terrible.
I wasn't for a second suggesting it was good, for God's sake. It's
look at a very young kid.
I managed the intro credits, and then when he said, in a very Australian voice, "Let's go and have a milkshake," I thought, But I could see the appeal back in the 80s to the kids, though. The opening sequence was somebody on a mongoose, somebody on a diamondback, doing the stunts and stuff all the way down this hill to go and get their milkshake. I could see why it'd appeal to the kids, but and Australian.
It needs to be judged firmly in the context of where it's an 80s Australian film. 2 things counting against it quite significantly there.
Yeah, I mean, some kids on BMXs battling bank robbers with guns and stuff. Yeah, okay. It's a bit A-teamish, isn't it?
With the added downside they didn't build anything. They didn't get locked in a garage with a suspiciously large quantity of welding equipment.
Can't use welding equipment at that age.
But no, as I say, it's I'm not. At no point last week, whilst eulogising about that film, did I say it was good. I need to make this abundantly. I don't want to be done for false advertising here. I just love it because I watched it when I was a kid, and it was I think I went straight out and did something stupid on my bike, fell off and chipped a tooth. That's what you do. It's like Jackass, but before Jackass.
I did watch it as a kid, Ed. I've got to admit that BMX thing in the 80s. Yeah, I was part of that. I was no good at it, but I could pull a wheelie and do a bunny hop. I couldn't do that these days.
That's more than I could do.
You're doing a wheelie all the time with your wave.
Well, presumably you just bit through the end of your cigarette, and that never did good at all.
You're not far from the truth, actually.
That's where all the best comedy comes from, being uncomfortably close to reality.
Yeah. So it's nice to see us keeping the podcast on track. That is the movies news. Let's move on, and when we come back, it's games news. So moving on, games news, and talking about Germany, let's go back to Germany. Gamescom news and views. Mark.
Yeah, Gamescom in Germany. Latest opportunity for Microsoft and Sony to go up against one another, and it's been a bit of a surprise because the Xbox One actually seems to have found a bit of stable ground finally. The Microsoft showing was initially not streamed live, though there's videos of it available afterwards. And it was a brief 30-odd minutes that was very concise, very well targeted. They stuck to their key points of a few little backtracks, as has become customary for Microsoft now. No fees for indie developers to release updates. Indies on One can self-publish, access to analytics and the cloud, and the goal of every console being a dev kit did smack a bit of kind of PR talk, but other than that, they kept it reliably free from fluff and just general marketing speak, and just basically tried to emphasize that it is you're primarily buying a games console, and these are the games that you will get with it. On the other hand, Sony kind of still had a bit of an overflow from E3. It felt it was a pretty kind of bloated 90 minutes. Wheeling out a few fan favorites, Shuei Yoshida demoing the OS early on, and a lot of kind of PlayStation Hearts Indies theme about it. And it did feel very much like they were just carrying on the narrative that had already moved on. Having a little dig at Microsoft about remaining consistent was an argument it was pretty much unnecessary, given that the whole discussion has moved on since there, and Microsoft managed to preempt that. It was interesting simply because we've become so used to Microsoft shooting themselves in the foot at these things that for them to put in a decent showing and manage to gain parity, but also preempt what was going to happen at the Sony show, I was very impressed.
Nice sweetener as well with FIFA in the box with the Xbox One.
Oh, that was massive. I mean, it's people will say it's playing to the crowd. People will say that it's populist. People will say
that's what you should be doing.
Exactly. You've got Call of Duty and FIFA are the two big games that are going to sell. Masses, they're ones that there's a huge section of the gaming market that literally just buy those games. Those are their yearly games, and they've got exclusive content for Call of Duty Ghosts, and they've got a FIFA 14 bundle as well as it free in all pre-orders. That's massive. They've basically taken the money that people will look at for getting the Kinect in the box, which was an extra £80, and they've slashed £50 off it straight away. So all of a sudden it's £30, and for £30 saying Kinect's in there, a lot of people will start to say, well, maybe I'll give this whole voice command and gesture command, I'll give it a try for £30.
Is this spending the huge reserve of money that Steve Ballmer has allegedly sort of built up over the years? Is this where it all comes into play? They can just afford to be a bit more lavish on the whole freebies and bungs than Sony can?
I think at the end of the day, it's to do with the fact that, I mean, number one, it's not going to be a physical game in the box, is it? It's just going to be a digital download. So it's basically, it's getting you into the idea of starting to download things and put them on your console. And ultimately, that's what they want. As they've had to kind of bastardize their design and say, right, well, we've got to give them discs that they can run on the optical drive. We want them downloading so that they can move between applications. We want them to have all their games on the hard drive anyway. What's the best way to get people convinced that's the way forward? Well, start offering games in bundles.
The only joke is, really, everyone wants it in the industry, wants it to go to digital download, Sony included, really, but they're just being a bit more coy about it all. Yeah,
I mean, it's got to be the future. We all know it is. We're all kind of dragging our heels saying, no, I want to stick with the physical medium, but we all know that that's basically where we're going anyway.
Just bring those prices down.
Yeah, and the fantastic thing was as well, which I didn't expect to see, was we finally saw a little bit more humility with regards pushing smart glass technology, and it did look at least passable with the Tom Clancy's The Division demo, which was all you really want. I think one of the things that put most people off from the Xbox One E3 show was that Microsoft didn't seem to find any sense of humility. It seemed to be so believing in their own hype. And then you come back to almost Steve Ballmer, which is this idea of a company moving forward and sure that everyone basically buys everything they say. And that kind of not only puts people off, they not only doubt it, but it makes them actually think, right, well, I'm not buying that because I think this person's lying to me from day one.
And of course, Steve's now leaving. which has put their share price up as well.
Yeah, it went up 9%, didn't it?
Yeah. Interesting thing as well, which I noticed, Mark, is the employees of Microsoft are going to get white Xbox Ones.
What's the point?
Well,
I
Well,
want a white
on
one,
eBay,
would
won't
you?
they?
well, I
I've
was
got a white Xbox
Foot.
360.
You know, the first thing I thought when I saw that, and the publicity that certain websites were giving it and putting this story out, is that if you're a Microsoft employee, you are going to score big time on eBay when you get your white Xbox One.
Yeah, I know, but you've got to do it under a kind of assumed name or something, because that's going to be considered high treason from
You'll be
Microsoft.
frowned upon at the very least.
There will be someone
How many were
employed.
there? 400 or something. Was it 4,000? I can't remember now. I thought it's got a 4 in it. It was fairly limited. I've got the feeling it was only 400 of these. So yeah, you're probably right. It would be a bit dodgy. The serial numbers will be logged, no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Steve Ballmer in some ways got a little bit of a harsh deal with regards how people view his stewardship. I don't know how anyone else feels about that.
Well, all I would say is that when the share price went up, when he announced that he was going, didn't that net him an additional $800 million thanks to his stock options? So however sorry I feel for the man, he does have an additional, on top of what he already had.
Yeah, he was
an
worth
additional
15.2 billion, as it was.
800 million. And do you know what? I'd take a bit of flack for $800 million. I'm just putting it out there.
I'd take it up the for 800 million.
Well,
You dropped.
Steve, you do that for a couple of
It's a lot
coffees.
less.
$800. Every man has his price, and as it turned out, mine was quite low.
recalibrate. Call Steve for sexy time.
Let Steve dial you in.
Will you wear the special glasses?
I think Ballmer suffered, didn't he, a lot for his public persona, that notorious corporate event in 2000 when he was...
There is an absolutely brilliant video out there on YouTube.
He will probably go down as the man who missed every major technological wave post 2000, though.
Yes.
MP3s, the iPhone, tablet market, virtually everything, with kind of things that you can do now just through browsers. And as soon as Microsoft lost that idea of monopolies and the amount they could sell to, they practically must live off what they can sell to businesses and the like.
Yeah, they are a business company.
Office,
They don't sell to consumers, they sell to businesses.
Yeah.
They do sell to consumers.
Yeah, I had to buy a copy of
but that's not
Business.
their main business, is what I meant. They are basically, their main customer is the business community, it's not consumers.
Yeah, but that's what they've been trying to shift to, though. They're trying to be the consumer company. They're trying to...
Yeah, and that's why they're so bad at it.
Steve Ballmer does bear an uncanny resemblance to the dinosaur from Theodore Rex, though.
Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Ballmer!
Yeah.
Yeah, right. He deserves it all.
So moving on from Microsoft, at some point I'll figure it out in the edit. PS4 launch date.
Yeah, November 29th. Not as much of a big fanfare for that. 15th, November 15th in the US, but in Europe it'll be 29th, and it's pretty much at the tail end of what people expected. So, if you've got to come in via a particularly unreliable online retailer or such like, look forward to parcel hell. The one thing that we didn't find out at Gamescom was the Xbox One release date, which seems just a little bit mad. I mean, there were kind of theories that perhaps Microsoft didn't want to say anything at the time for fear that they might be kind of almost gazumped, so to speak, by Sony's release date. This theory that at E3, Sony, deliberately cut out the camera at the last minute so they could undercut Microsoft's price then. But there's still, no word on it. You'd have to say that most bets would put it at pretty much about the same time as the PS4, end of November. But it is a little bit odd that we've had both Gamescom and E3, and yet there's nothing.
It's going to be before Christmas, right? So they're running out of time to make an announcement, frankly. I mean, it's only 3 months now until...
Yeah, I mean, the kind of the conspiracy theory is, or shall we say the worry is that as they've scaled back the amount of countries in Europe that they're actually going to be releasing it in, and there were, lots of kind of different totally unsubstantiated rumours about having trouble making enough of them and problems with supply and the like of the pieces, that perhaps they're just having a little bit of trouble nailing down a date when they can say that it'll definitely be out and they will have a decent supply there.
Yeah, I don't think it's all really that relevant, is it? They'll sell as many as they can get into sales channels, I would have thought, both PS4 and Xbox One. They'll just sell as many as they can make.
It's funny, but you do think that it's that typical manufacturer ideal of having so many that it looks like they will be sold out, but not so many that it will be freely, abundantly available to everyone. You don't want to have so few that people just say, it might be another couple of weeks, it might be a month, I'll just buy a PS4. But at the same time, you don't want to be that person going into the shop, see PS4 completely sold out. We got lots of Xbox Ones though. I just can't
see that happening now. I just can't see there being enough of either. I think they're both going to be sold out.
I tend to go with the conspiracy theory that if they're being quiet on a launch date, they haven't got enough of them, frankly.
No idea.
Don't know, don't care.
Me. I'll get around to buying one of them eventually, but there's no danger of me being anywhere close to release date.
And that is it for this week's AVForums podcast. Thank you very much for listening. And all I need to do is thank our contributors tonight. They are Mark Botwright.
It was more of a stain than a globule, actually.
Mark Hodgkinson.
Well, this piece is called Lick My Love Pump.
Simon Crust.
The numbers all go to 11.
Ed Selley.
He was the patron saint of quality footwear.
And Bald Withers.
It does disturb me, but I rise above it. I'm a professional.
You quote.
Don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter at AVForums and Facebook.com/AVForums. Why not like us? You can also bookmark AVForums.com for the latest reviews, news, and videos. Plus, why not leave us a rating on iTunes if you made it to the end and enjoyed the show. I'm Phil Hinton. Thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you again next Wednesday.